Hi guys, welcome back. It's time to finish up the Lost Bookshop, and it's been quite the experience. This book has been very different from anything I've ever read before, and the best part of it is healing. It's a good book that fulfills a lot, actually. The author did very well. So I can't wait to see what happens and how it ends. So we left off on page 389, chapter 54, Henry. How are you so calm? Your grandmother's name was Rose Cloacy. I mean, how many Rose Cloacys could have been born that year? It's a pretty big coincidence, right? I realized how loud I was being as I paced around her basement flat in relation to her almost zen-like poise on the bed. I'm not sure if I'd describe what I'm feeling as calm, Henry, she said, unflinching in the face of this monumental twist in her family ancestry. You're processing. Good, right. Well, this was nuts. I had met the woman in my dreams only to find out that she carried the missing manuscript of Emily Bronte on her skin. And now, it seemed, was the great-granddaughter of Opaline Carlyle, one of the greatest book dealers of the 20th century. A fact that, up to now, she had been completely unaware of. Wait until I told the faculty about this. I finally had my thesis. That's what you're thinking about? Huh? What? Wait, how did you? I hadn't spoken that part aloud, had I? She got up and pulled on her clothes with an urgency that suggested some activity other than my preferred one. Of course you should write about it. Everyone needs to know Opaline's story, and you're the one to tell it. Okay, how did you know that's what I was? It's a gift, Henry, and I don't plan on hiding it anymore. I tried to pretend that this wasn't unnerving at all, and then immediately tried to not think of anything, lest she pluck it from my brain. The branches of the tree fluttered in an imperceptible breeze, and the door slowly swung open with a theatrical creak. As for Emily's manuscript, no one's going to believe it, are they? She was right. We had no proof that it was real, but we knew, and that was enough. The realization blew me sideways. The recognition didn't matter to me anymore. You'll have to settle for being the only one who sees it, she said, kissing me on the cheek. I think I'm okay with that. I was very okay with that. Right, should we give it a try? She asked, pulling on her shoes. Climbing Everest? Dinner at the new Asian place? Apparently I did not share her gift. She batted my arm and gave me that heart-melting smile. Finding the bookshop. You read the last page, didn't you? I tried to summon up the words in my mind's eye. The soul of the night turned upside down. I'm not even sure what it means. The soul of the night? Don't be so literal, she said with a newfound confidence I'd never seen. It looked good on her. If I am able to be the custodian, and everything that has happened since I arrived here has been screaming to tell me that, I need to believe. I've been in denial for so long. I suppose I just never dared hope. She broke off, her voice thick with emotion. I put my arms around her waist and told her to slow down, take a breath. You are so special, only you can't see it. I bent my head and let my lips touch the softness of her mouth, feeling the sweet scent of her breath pulling me in. I'm just not sure where I fit in, I said, reluctantly breaking away. Stupid thoughts. You're the only one who has seen the bookshop. That has to mean something. It was true. The search for the manuscript had led me here, and now I'd found the treasure I never knew I was searching for. She took my hand and led me upstairs. No light was on, but the rooms were lit by an incredibly large moon shining through the windows. What about Madame Bowden? I asked as we rounded the ground floor and headed up to the first landing. I don't think she's coming back. Any hint of anxiety had left her voice. What was going on? She stopped for a moment and turned to face me. Would you think it strange? Martha, I said, taking her by the shoulders, I think the strange horse has bolted, don't you? She smiled and physically shook off whatever last doubts were holding her back. Apart from us, there isn't one other person who has actually met Madame Bowden. I asked my friends from college. None of them saw her that night at my birthday party. Not even my mother. Right, okay, that is strange. Apart from Shane, she added, her forehead creasing as she became lost in troubling memories of the past. Why was that? She whispered almost inaudibly to herself. I began to wish I hadn't seen her either. Was she a ghost? I don't think she's a ghost. So you're just reading my thoughts at will now, is it? I don't know if I like this. Martha smiled and assured me her gift wasn't that refined. I read people's stories, not every single thought, although sometimes your thoughts are easily readable, she said, stepping closer to me in the darkness. We kissed again because, well, any opportunity. A small door at the end of the hall, which resembled something you might find at the front of a gnome's house, required both of us to contort ourselves in equally undignified fashion in order to gain entry. Your average attic, where Christmas lay in hiding for 11 months of the year, was illuminated by the milky glow of the moon through half-sized windows. Dust sheets covered unknowable shapes, and a shovel mirror at the end of the room reflected another young couple entering the room from a similarly tiny door. I recalled a book I had found at the bottom of a bargain bin in a charity shop near Camden. Something about the memories of buildings and how the walls are infused with them. They never forget what we, as mere mortals, misplace. I hadn't thought of it since, until now. There's a note, Martha said, picking up an envelope with her name on it. Martha, I have played many different characters in other people's stories. Your story was my favorite, and this chapter shall be your finest yet. In order for something to exist, you must first believe in it. Invite your heart to see what your eyes cannot. Follow your path and bring the scholar. I like having him around. B. Is that her handwriting? I asked. Her? Yes, Madame Baum. I don't think Madame Baum is the person we thought she was. What do you mean by that? She put the letter down and breathed in deeply before smiling to herself. You never left at all, did you? I waited for a moment and looked around the small attic space. Who was she speaking to? Truth be told, I felt a mixture of things. Glad to be there with Martha, stupid for hoping that something otherworldly would happen, unless because I clearly had no idea what we were doing. I had done all the research, but Martha seemed to be able to just feel her way, instinctively. It was like that song, The Whole of the Moon. I spoke about wings, you just flew. Is that a poem? No, it's a song, I said, taking her hand. I could not be in the same room and not be close to her. It's about the moon and this guy who's an idiot and a girl who just knows everything. Sounds just like us. Exactly. I knew you'd like it. She put her arms around my neck and we stood there, shuffling a dance with no music. This isn't all too weird for you, is it? Her words came out muffled as she spoke into the shoulder of my woolen jumper. If it was, I would have said so when the tree started growing out of your flat. She snorted, which made us both laugh. I feel like I'm in a dream, she said, and I concurred. But dreams had a habit of ending. I decided quietly that our dream would be different. There's another door. She broke free of my arms and rushed to the far end of the room. On closer inspection, there was indeed another door. It was exactly where I thought the shovel mirror had stood, with our reflections inside. I blinked slowly. Nope, it was a door. No mistaking it. How are we supposed to see where we're going? I asked, about her 30 seconds of following her blindly in the dark. We were inside what felt like the eaves of the house. You're not. You just have to trust me. But you don't know where you're going either? I panted now, half crouched, as I just whacked my head on a roof beam. You once asked me to trust you, and you don't see me moaning about it, she needled. I kept quiet for another minute or so until it felt as though we were going upstairs. Just checking that you're aware of ascending despite being in the attic. I'm aware. She reached back and patted the side of my head. It did not help matters. You remember the book, how it talks about an upside-down stairway? I did remember it, but I thought it was some kind of sweet fairy tale for kids, not a map for... What exactly? Yes, but you don't really believe we're going to find the bookshop. Her voice seemed to be getting farther away. You can't find something that was never lost. Great, even Martha was speaking in riddles now. And that was Madame Baum's influence. And where the hell was she? There was no time to think logically as the passage grew narrower, and I could feel the skin on my hands being scratched. Is now a good time to mention that I'm claustrophobic? I announced as casually as I could, bravely omitting to comment on the fact that the stairs seemed to be taking us downward now, in a tight spiral. I think these are the roots of the tree, don't you? Of course they are, I muttered to myself. I mean, it made perfect sense if you had just taken some sort of Class A drug, or if your last name was Pevensey, and you had just stumbled into a wardrobe full of fur coats. I suddenly became very aware of my own thoughts, this constant stream of ridicule. As Martha pointed out, wasn't I the one who had walked straight into the bookshop on the first night here? Yet I had immediately dismissed it as some kind of drunken mirage. My mind wouldn't let me believe. Martha suffered no such resistance, and I decided that if I did not necessarily believe, I could at least believe in her. The soul of the night turned upside down. Sorry? That line from the book. It said that you have to trust your will, and you will end up exactly where you're meant to be. I feel like I already have, I said, but I wasn't sure she heard me. No sooner had I spoken the words than I saw a literal light at the end of the tunnel. My heart began to race. Chapter 55, Opening. Dublin, 1952. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. I let Emily Dickinson's poetry book fall in my lap and spied the stained glass windows of the shop, the colors of which now painted the image of a bird in an open cage. I made a kind of pact with the universe that if I kept the door to my heart open, one day my little girl would walk through it. In the meantime, I found an occupation that created the illusion of doing something to bring that day even closer. I began writing a book, a children's book, A Place Called Lost. I knew there was a strange kind of magic in these walls, maybe not the kind you'd find in traveling shows or under the big top, but something far subtler than that. I began to switch off the lights, lingering over the task. I had an undefinable sense that something or someone was close. Someone I knew, someone I loved, but I couldn't trust it, wouldn't. Even when I heard the knock on the glass door, I didn't turn to look. Couldn't face the disappointment of being wrong. I placed my hands on the desk and let my weight lean against it, squeezing my eyes shut. My heart was disobeying my mind, and without consciously making the decision, I turned around. He was there. Joseph, the snow falling gently on his head and shoulders. A sigh of relief escaped my lips, and I could have sworn the books on the shelf sighed too. The bookshop had let him in when I had first escaped St. Agnes's and needed him the most. Now he had returned, everything felt hopeful again. He stepped closer to the window and I followed. We were separated only by the thinnest pane of glass. My eyes searched for his eyes, his lips, his entire frame. Was he real? Are you going to let me in? He asked, a lopsided smile on his face. It's a little cold. I burst out laughing and it sounded like silver bells to my ears. Bells that hadn't rung for years. I opened the door and we both stood at the threshold, the stained glass overhead blooming with flowers. Are you back for good? My father passed away in the autumn. I placed my hand over my heart. I'm sorry. I can repair some of the old music boxes that were in the attic. Anything that is broken. You've already repaired what was broken in this place, I said, rushing into his arms. So many nights I have dreamed of you in this place, he said, holding me tightly, as though nothing would tear us apart again. This bookshop is rooted in my heart, I said. I have to find a way to keep it alive, for my daughter. He pulled back and searched my face for answers. She's alive. My baby is alive. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. The joy in his eyes was enough. Please, come inside, I said finally. All he carried was a large canvas duffel bag with the book poking out of the pocket at the front. Red leather, gilt-edged pages. It was so familiar to me, but so utterly incongruous that I hardly dared to hope. For you, he said, following my eyeline, and handed it to me. I found it at an old bookshop in Austria. I took the time-worn book into my hands and felt the magic of childhood rushing back to greet me. I searched for the inscription and gasped when I saw it. Alfred Carlyle, my real father. How did you mind leaving? I beg of you, stop speaking and kiss me. Chapter 56, Martha. I had the strangest dreams that night. I was walking through an old Italian village, hot and dusty with summertime sunshine. I stepped inside a cool, dark building that was lined floor to ceiling with old books. There was a man there, and he handed me a key. Then, as quick as lightning, I was back in Ha'penny Lane. Everything was the same but different. There was a woman inside, a familiar stranger. She told me that had been waiting for me, that the shop had been waiting for me also. Wake up, she said, wake up. In the morning light, I could see the light brown strands of Henry's hair on the pillow beside me. If he had been disappointed with not finding the bookshop, he hadn't let on. The narrow passageway led directly back to my flat. It wasn't a secret pathway to another dimension. It was just an old servant's tunnel or something. He took me back to bed and said that he had already found everything he wanted. I had found more than I had ever dreamed of, and yet something felt incomplete. The tree. I'm awake, Henry responded to my scream, one eye still shut, his hand standing on end. It's gone. Okay, the very fact of the tree growing here was odd in the first place, but this is just... What are you doing? I was getting dressed fast. Well, aren't you coming? Henry blinked, then reluctantly pulled on his jeans. I ran up the stairs ahead of him. Martha, were those words always here on the stairs? Strange things are found, he shouted up, but I had found something stranger still. I had expected to find the hallway of number 12 Hawpenny Lane at the top of the stairs where it always was. Instead, I found myself standing in a place I had never fully believed existed up to that point. Opaling's Bookshop. Daylight streamed in through the glass shop front, creating rays of sunshine glittering with dust motes falling like confetti. I hardly dared breathe in case the whole thing would evaporate. Slowly, I let my eyes readjust to what was in front of me. There were wooden bookcases from floor to ceiling lined with soft green moss and with ivy creeping along the edges. Fallen leaves swept silently across the tiled floor, and floating overhead was toy hot air balloons. It felt as though the place had just woken up from a long slumber, like Rip Van Winkle, and was shaking off the years of hibernation. I blinked, but it did not disappear. The scent of warm wood and paper filled the air, along with the sweetness like a golden September apple. It was full of brightly colored antique books and curiosities, all waiting for our arrival. I'd come home. Henry bumped into me at the top of the stairs and then took in the view. Please tell me you're seeing this and I'm not having an episode. It's real, Henry. I turned to look at him and smiled. I'm seeing it, but I can't believe it, he whispered. How is this possible? I took a long, deep breath and tried to think of the last line in Opaling's book. Maybe it was I who was lost all along and not the bookshop. I reached out for Henry's hand and he clasped it tightly. We did it, I said. We found the bookshop. His smile was beautiful and unguarded, like that of a little child. Look at this, he said, pointing to the stained glass panels at the top of the windows that were like nothing I'd ever seen, yet inexplicably familiar. Is that? Henry stepped closer and pointed to a design at the very edge. A woman wearing a long coat and trousers with very short hair, holding hands with a soldier. It's our Madame Bound. I knew it. Epilogue. The rain had eased off outside, and the bank of gray clouds that had huddled over the city like a lumpy duvet was breaking apart and revealing small, irregular windows of blue sky. Is all of that really true? Asked the little boy, openly stuffing a tea cake in his pocket for later. Every word, said Martha. She began shuffling the envelopes and letters. It was time to get back to work. What happened to the house and the old lady? Number 12? It's still there, but someone else lives there now. He nodded his head as though this explanation were perfectly satisfactory. So the book told you that you'd become a bookseller? She thought for a moment. I suppose it did, in a way. His eyebrows scrunched up in concentration. What is it? I wish I could find a book that would tell me what I'm supposed to do when I'm old. Older, she corrected. Besides, I think it's already found you. What do you mean? You already know what you want to become. Do I? She nodded her head patiently. Didn't you feel your heart jump at a certain point in the story when I told you about Matthew Fitzpatrick? Oh, that. Yes, that. He slid off the stool and dragged his feet along the tiled floor back to where his school bag was abandoned. He hefted it up onto his shoulder as though it held all the worries of the world within it. Teacher says it's a silly notion. They're the best kind to have, if you ask me. He gave her a curious look. It was almost as if she was challenging him. Grown-ups hardly ever listened to him, and when they did, they certainly didn't encourage him to believe in silly notions. The thing about books, she said, is that they help you to imagine a life bigger and better than you could ever dream of. With that, the bell rang over the shop door and a tall man with hair falling into his eyes breezed into the shop. He went straight over to Martha and gave her an altogether prolonged smooch on the cheek, which the little boy thought was gross. "Who do we have here?" he asked eventually. "Shall we tell him?" Martha asked the little boy, "Shall we tell him who you really are?" He looked a little uncertain at first and seemed to gain some confidence and puffed out his chest. "I'm a magician," he announced. "Is that so?" Henry asked. "Yes," Martha said, "and for his first trick, he is going to make that magic book he's been reading all morning disappear." She nodded her head for him to retrieve it. "For free?" the little boy asked. "The first one is always free," she replied, and within moments he had it stuffed into his school bag before charging out the front door with Sparks at his heels and, in the strange morning light, what could have been mistaken for a cape flowing in his wake. "You've done it again," Henry said, sliding his arm around Martha's waist. "Done what, Mr. Field?" "Made someone very, very happy, Mrs. Field." This time they kissed for so long that they had to close the shop. And that is where the story ends, although they never did find Emily Bronte's manuscript. To this day, it lies hidden inside of a vault of an Irish bank, just waiting to become a part of someone else's story. I'll even read the author's note. Dear reader, I hope you enjoyed escaping into the charming world of antiquarian books as much as I enjoyed writing it. This story began, as they often do, with a few lines hastily captured on paper before they had a chance to fly away, in the image of a man standing in the space where a bookshop should be. Little did I know then the journey that Opaline, Martha, and Henry would take me on. All I knew was that I wanted to write a story about a very unusual bookshop with its roots in the golden age of rare book dealing, and a little bit of magic, mystery, and romance along the way. There is so much research involved in writing this story, it would take another book to include everything that has inspired it. I read somewhere once that you have to love what you write about, as you'll be spending a lot of time together, and I can truly say that this was a labor of love. The books, the characters, and how they challenge, inspire, and heal each other is the real magic in this story. But don't tell them that I'm bound, I said that. I love to write in parallel timelines, as I'm always intrigued by how the past shapes our present. In the Lost Bookshop, one of the major themes is that of finding your purpose in the world, a theme that echoes down through the generations. In fact, all of my novels share that sense of self-discovery, of becoming, and of belonging. I like to write about characters that don't always fit into the conventional ideals that society imposes on them, especially women, and Opaline was certainly unconventional for her time. I wanted to write a book that would encapsulate how I feel as a woman about the women who have been marginalized in the past and continue to be written out of their own stories even today. Writing her gave me the opportunity to research amazing women who achieved wonderful things. Women like the journalist Nellie Bly and the literary scholars and book dealers who inspired the idea of finding Emily Bronte's second novel, Leona Rostenberg and Madeline Stern. At the heart of all my books is the universal experience, what makes us human, our shared desires to be loved, to be seen, and to manifest the expression of our own innate specialness. That is the key for me and why I chose to tell these stories in the way that I do. Magical realism allows us to step outside of our limitations of imagination, to show that anything is possible. As Martha says, books help you to imagine a life bigger and better than you could ever dream of. Love, Evie. Guys, this was really good. And there's one called Read On for an exclusive extract from the Story Collector, an evocative and charming novel full of secrets and mystery from the best-selling author of The Lost Bookshop. It's called The Story Collector. But guys, that was so good. So good. Thank you for being here with me through this. I know it took us a little longer, but sometimes maybe it's meant to be that way. But I didn't want to rush it. There's no need to do that. Books are important, and this time is important that you take for yourself. And you can feel like you're experiencing it with someone else. And I feel great that you guys have read it with me. And many more in the future will. So that's so cool. As more people see the channel, hopefully it'll get in the thousands. I'll get people reading again. That's my hopes. And get people on a, good mental space, I guess, with good books. So we will start the new book probably tomorrow, or maybe we'll wait till next week. And it's called Flawless, and I'll put a picture of the book and a link to the next book down below. But it's called Flawless. That's a collection of books, but we'll only read one from each collection, so we can kind of get into the mix of a lot of different writing. But anyway, guys, so there we have it. Bye, guys.